So today I want to do a little review on glide bait fishing. Now, not what you normally see on YouTube, these giant glide baits people are fishing in, open water lakes off of a boat. Sometimes you'll see people, bigger YouTubers doing glide bait fishing in ponds and stuff like that, and they've got sponsors, or they've got the money to go buy these really nice expensive glide baits, and I guess they're not that worried about breaking them off or losing them. But if you want to do some glide bait fishing and you want to practice with it or be able to use it in ponds and smaller waters, there are some budget friendly ways to do it. And I've found some different techniques, some lures that you can get for a good price, do a few modifications that don't cost a lot and don't take a lot of time, basic tools, if any tools. One of the biggest ones is having a file. But I'm going to show you two different ones today. Now, the main point of this video is I got one of the Berkley Nessie 5-inch glide baits, the soft plastic. So I'm going to do a review on it, but I also want to show what you can do with one of the little $13 Bass Pro XPS 5-inch glide baits, the hard lip glide baits. With a few modifications, I've been able to make one of those run as well as I could hope. I mean, really, I can run it slow, I can chop it through the water real fast and work it almost like a spook that you're doing for salt water, just twitching it back and forth on top. But I want to share some of what I've learned from these, some of the problems I've had with them, some of the ways that I've found to fix those problems, and then also, especially with the Nessie, I've learned a few things already with it, but that might help you out to not get aggravated with it when you first try. Because when you go from a hard plastic glide to one of these new soft plastics, it's a different animal. It's not going to work the exact same way as what I've seen. Now, maybe with the bigger versions, the 7 and the 9-inch, maybe they do work and perform more like a typical, hard plastic jointed glide bait. But I'm going to show you what I've learned here. Okay, so here on the left we got the Berkley Nessie. This is the 5-inch. It's got the treble hook with the little clip that holds it in. It goes back up into the body with one of the hooks, and then it has a little retention hook here that really holds that treble in place pretty well. They've got hard plastic fins here on the tail section, and as well here on the side of the front body. This one said it was 2/5 of an ounce. This was the only color I was able to get, and I just wanted to practice with one and see how they ran. And then this is a Bass Pro XPS, and I've done quite a few different mods to it to get it to where it runs the way that I like it. It's small enough you can use it in ponds, and even in the creeks or the rivers. You just got to be really careful with your cast and your positioning. But I've got both of these set up on bait casters, and I'm going to kind of go through the differences. As far as retrieval and speed that you want to work it, we're going to figure out what's possible, and if this Berkley Nessie can really be a contender against the hard plastics, or if it's kind of its own type of lure, not like a standard glide, which is kind of where I'm leaning now. But let's see how it goes here. Alright, so we're going to start out with the Nessie here, just to kind of show how it goes. Now, normally, the way I'm not the best with glide baits, I've been practicing with them for a little over a year now, just in ponds, clear water, trying to learn the retrieves and the basics of it. And normally with me, I work lures with my wrist and the rod tip. I'm not big on using the actual reel to work the lure. I see that a lot. I know a lot of people do it. I've just been able to do it better by working the rod tip and using my wrist. But what I've learned with this lure is if I try using the rod tip to get my retrieve going, it just, okay, say you're trying to walk a spook on top of the water, and you twitch once on slack line, it goes left. You twitch again on slack line, it goes right. so you can walk that lure side to side. Well, with this Nessie, if I try working it that way, it just goes left. Like if it's looking at me, it just goes left, left, left. It keeps jerking the same way. So I was getting so aggravated with it. So the only way I've learned to get this thing to work the way I want it to is by using the reel. So I'm having to practice that and get used to it, which I'm not a big fan of, because it's a new method for me. But if you just do little quarter twitches on it, it does seem to kind of walk side to side. The trick is, you need to do like I'm doing, and you got to have some open water, make your casts, get where you can see the lure, and you're going to have to practice it and memorize that cadence of how much line you need to be taking up each time. Kind of watch the lure to see how long it takes to glide left, and then once it gets that full glide left, then you can hit it again to get it to go right. And then you want to be able to stall it every now and then. Now, I haven't learned how to like chop it. That's one thing I like about glides, is being able to chop them. Oh, I just got a bite there. I just had a largemouth swim up after it. So I'm trying to practice on how to chop it. See, normally with a glide, I would pull, 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 and that would make it go to the left or the right. But with this Nessie, if I try doing that, it just goes left every time. I've looked at it, the wiring, the hardware on it seems to be facing the right direction. It's centered, but if I use the rod tip, it just goes left, which is to my right every time. And then every now and then you'll get it to go right, but it's just not uniform at all. So that's very aggravating. But if I use the reel, which once you make a long cast, that's the thing, you kind of have to memorize it, because once you make a long cast, you can't see the thing. And so you have to have that timing really figured out. You want to, with the glide, you want to be able to kind of chop it and let it sit, you know, walk it and let it chill. Now with this Nessie, one thing I have learned, on a slow to medium reel, it does have just kind of a very simple swim to it. Just a slight little wobble. If you let it sink deep enough and you do a fast retrieve, it will get a bit of a faster swim. But this one's one that's gonna take some time getting practice with to really get comfortable. I can tell that already. See, I can reel it fast and it'll go back and forth, kind of like a Buka bull shad or a baby bullgill. You know, Mike Buka said on those bull shads and baby bullgills, it was meant to reel really fast and then stop and let it sit. And that's what's gonna draw the bite, is that fast retrieve and then stop. And that's when the bass are gonna come get it. This Nessie does work well for that, but I got it because if I'm fishing smaller waters, I want to be able to use something like a glide bait. But all of the hard plastic glide baits, you know, a lot of times that I'm fishing just for sport. I want to catch stuff and I want to release it. I want it to be able to get bigger for the next year so I can catch it again. And when you have those dual treble hooks on any hard baits, it just, if they bite the front hook, the back hook is going to get under their gill plate. And that's when you're going to end up killing that fish. And I know that's my responsibility as a fisherman. If I'm fishing for food, I'll use treble hooks. But if I'm fishing for fun, I want to use light wire hooks where I know that fish is going to be okay. I can return it and come back a month later or a year later and catch that fish. and it be even bigger. You know, that's the fun in it. You know, you don't want to just fish like people on TV and on YouTube and just tear these fish up, and it's so wasteful to try to get one shot. That's one thing I'm not going to do ever on this channel, is be focused on big old giant hook sets and dragging the fish up out of the water like an idiot and making a big show of it. This is a blessing to be able to fish, to come across a good, healthy, good sized fish that gives a good fight. I mean, that's just awesome. And that fish earned the right to keep going so that somebody else can catch it and enjoy that. Okay, so I am getting a little bit of an action. If I reel and barely twitch the rod tip, I can kind of chop it. It's not a wide glide, but it is kind of chopping if I'm slow retrieving and giving multiple taps. And I'm seeing some largemouth here that are following it up. I've had a couple of bites, but they're just kind of checking it out. You know, this is a pond, and this is a silver and blue glide bait, so it doesn't look like anything that's in the pond. But the largemouth are following it and striking at it. I just haven't gotten one to get the hook yet. But having this single hook, there's one going after it. He's going after it on the fall, but he didn't take it. They're definitely checking it out. The hook's staying in place. It's running well. Alright, let's try it on just a straight kind of moderate retrieve. Like, we'll let it sink a little bit, and then I'm just going to kind of reel in some of my slack. I'll pull it towards me. That'll get a little bit of wobble. Let it sit. I'll pull it towards me again, try to get some wobble. We've had so much rain, the water's really murky right now. But I'm able to see some of the fish. I'm able to see some of the fish when they're closer to the surface, and they are kind of tracking it. I got one largemouth that's hanging out right here near it. And on this one, I will say, I've tried doing Palomar knot tied right to the lure. I've tried doing a loop knot on 17-pound test to see if that makes it walk better. I've tried using a snap ring swivel connector. That didn't work very well. And I've gotten down to these Norman speed clips. So far seems to give the best action on this lure. I've not added any weight to it. I've not modified this lure at all. So just the Norman speed clip up front here is the only thing that's different from out of the box. I mean, the action's not bad on it. It's just, you cannot work it like I would my normal glide, where I can chop it and I know even if it's far away from me, I know how it's running. This one is more fluid the way that it runs in the water. Being the soft plastic, it does seem to be more of a fluid movement through the water. And it has drawn some attention. But this is the slow sinking one. It might be good to add a little bit of weight. I'll try that next, is maybe putting, I've heard of using a nail weight, but I'm thinking either put a little bit of tungsten putty towards the front of the hook hanger, or possibly maybe doing like a 1/64 ounce bullet weight and Texas rig this thing just to give some weight on the nose to get it started, and that way I can do a faster retrieve without it. You know, I won't be able to stop it as well because it'll get hung up, but if I'm wanting to chop it and get a faster retrieve, maybe a little bullet weight on the front would help just stabilize it. See, that's a pretty good action right there though. Let's see if I can get where y'all can see it here. I'm just making a cast to see if the camera can get it. Alright. Okay, so if I reel fast, it does a nice little S zigzag pattern, but it rises to the top really quick. I think that's because of those hard plastic fins. See there, if I've got it close to me and I'm popping it, nope, see it's going to the right every time. That's the thing that aggravated me. As soon as I took it out of the box and I tried fishing this thing, it just wants to go the same direction. See, it'll get a pattern either left or right. It might walk once or twice, and then after that, it's like left, right, left, 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 left. And it's weird how it does that, but I guess that would definitely look like an injured fish. If it can only go one direction, maybe they'll think, oh, he lost a fin. But as far as planning out my retrieve and planning out how I'm working the bait, that doesn't really help me any. See, now I'm using the rod tip and it just keeps diving down into the water because it was rolling sideways. You know, and I could be working it too fast. It's, you know, there's probably, with all lures, there's a specific method you're supposed to use to fish them that they were designed for. But then there's the method that you can figure out that catches you fish. Just because they meant it to be run a certain way doesn't mean that's the only right way. Because I'll go ahead and tell you, I don't fish very many things how they were intended or how they come out of the box. Because I've got to make it work for where I'm fishing. And that's what y'all need to do. You know, figure out what your fish like, where you're fishing, and just find ways to make that work for you. See, on a slow retrieve, which the closer it gets to you, you lose the action. But on a slow, steady retrieve, it does make just a nice little S motion coming through the water. If you go fast, it does nice at the chop, 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 you know, cutting left to right if you're just reeling it. I've just never practiced with using my reel to manipulate the lure. I've always used my wrist and the rod tip. Oh, I just had a bite from a largemouth. He come up and grabbed it, but he was right behind the hook. All right, let's see if we can get in here. Come on, go get it, bud. See, and every time I try to use the rod tip, I'm just in a habit of using my rod tip to work it, and as soon as I do that, I throw the action off. See, that's more like a gliding action. Just not even quarter turns on the reel. Like fifth turns. Let it sink a little bit. Oh, a largemouth ball in it. They're curious about it, but I've only had 2 actually swipe at it. And one was chopping it and killing it, and then that time was just kind of a slow gliding it with the reel, and he followed it all the way up to me, but never really went after it. Oh, that was when it came after it. So I chopped it I got stuck in some grass and I chopped it real quick, and I watched a smaller largemouth come out after it and tail it, and I stopped chopping it. I should have kept chopping it, because as soon as it stopped moving, he just turned around. I saw his tail go the other way. Okay, so that's about 20 minutes trying out the Nessie. I've kind of figured out some retrieves for it, but it's completely different than a hard plastic glide. And I may finish off, I'm gonna try this one now. Now this is my favorite little glide to use, because I can use this in creeks, I can use it in ponds. I still don't like using it with the 2 treble hooks, but it is just so much fun to use. This one I can use at the river even, because if I do get it snagged and lose it, like I said, I've got less than $18 in it and maybe 45 minutes of work to get it to where it is now. But let me show you how I like to use it and what I've been able to make this thing do compared to when it came out of the box. So first off, out of the box with one of these, if you were to hold it up, the tail would go to about maybe right here. It would have, you know, about this much movement side to side. With what I've done, it can come all the way to here and all the way to there. And that's what allows it to swim with more action and to chop really well. I don't really want to catch a fish on it today. I just want to show y'all the way that I can work it and the retrieve that I get. So to do that, I'm gonna get up here on the bench and see if we can get a better view in the water for y'all to see. Okay, let's see what we got here. Angle this down a little bit. There we go. All right. And in the bushes. There we go. Well, that's not the typical retrieve or cast. So, okay, let's try that again. Okay, so with this one, as soon as I cast it out, I can start a quick retrieve and get it moving. And with my rod tip, I mean, I can chop it or I can just slow swim it. And slow swimming it, it'll get about an 8-inch side to side wobble on it. Just a steady retrieve on the reel. And it'll go about 8 inches left and right. And then if you chop it, you can make that even more aggressive. You can get it to go probably a foot side to side easily. And then I put that blue tape on the top so that if the water's murky, I'm able to see the lure easier. It just gives me an index point. I can tell which direction it's facing, which way that I'm walking it, and it just gives me a lot more control over it and more confidence as I'm fishing it. See, I can go slow with it, or I can just reel it straight in. Let me try to get just a straight reel and see if y'all can see it here. Okay, so I'm gonna keep it up near the top. Yeah, see, that thing is just S-ing back and forth, just cruising. Just a steady reel. So I left the original back hook I didn't like the way that it sank. It sank kind of nose heavy, so I placed the front hook with an aluminum, one of those red aluminum hooks. You'll see a lot of people talk about with jerk baits, you know, in certain times of the year to put a red aluminum hook on the front, or a red dyed hook on the front, like the middle under the belly, that draws a strike. But so I figured that couldn't hurt, but having the aluminum hook on the front made it just fall a lot better when I kill it. It just falls kind of level the whole way. The nose doesn't dive down, and so that way I can just pick my retrieve back up and it's still parallel with the ground, or parallel with the bottom of the water column. So I can just slow reel this thing and it'll just swim in for me. And then if I need to speed it up, buddy, it'll give you some cool action. But then if you've got, say, schooling fish or real aggressive fish, you can get such a tight chop on this thing. And just it's just left, right, left, right, left, right. And kill it. Kill it. See how that thing's falling? It just stays level. And I like that. Which I'd say today, the way the fish were acting with the Nessie, they're going for more of a slower retrieve. Because they were going after it. I'm kind of trying to keep them away from this one because I don't want to get two trebles in one of my bass. But it is a whole different lure. It's not the same thing. You're not going to get the same action out of them, but I can see a place for that Nessie. They're at the end fishing it. Honestly, what got my attention is towards the end, before I started casting this one, when I had the camera off, I started working it a little bit faster with very slight, just kind of a steady retrieve like this, but just working my rod tip. And it was almost like the most aggressive little topwater walking bait you'd ever seen. And that was drawing some of the smaller largemouth in to go after it. So I could see using that slow sink Nessie kind of like a topwater soft plastic glide. Because you have to wait a while for it to fall. It doesn't just fall and rest. It's a very slow sink, so. But it did seem to get their attention. I've only had 2 followers on this one since I started this section, but neither of them took it, which I'm working it a lot faster. Like I said, I'd rather not catch one of my bass on this one, just because I don't want to mess them up. So all in all, I'd say the Nessie, I know it's a little bit controversial. They knocked off a small business in Japan and took their idea. The small business in Japan, yeah, they charge a lot for it because it's a small business and they don't have big production factories. But that was their design. And that's one thing about bait companies, you know, I would like to design some lures. I would like to make some different lures and technique stuff that I've figured out. But I know if I ever do, and I show somebody, you know, how am I going to make anything from my invention if some company comes and rips it off that has a massive factory, or they say, hey, I'll give you a little bit of money for your idea and we're going to make, you know, hundreds of thousands, if not millions off of it. And we'll give you a couple $1,000s. And if you say no, well, they're just going to do it anyway because they can pay lawyers to screw you and keep you in court until you go bankrupt. And I don't know, that's one of the downsides to everything nowadays. You've got people that have lots of money and lots of power that don't care about everybody else. So that's just something we have to deal with and pray about. The Lord will always be with us. He'll take care of us. He'll provide for us. So I worked on doing the video yesterday with the Berkley Nessie compared to like another budget glide bait, but a hard plastic, the Bass Pro XPS, the 5.5 or 5 3/4. But we're gonna come down here to the pond this morning and see if we can. I had a couple of the bass swipe at it yesterday, but I was doing it kind of midday, so it's about 7:15 right now. I'm gonna see if I can get somebody to bite this thing this morning. So we'll see if we can't get a fish catch for the video. So my review on the Berkley Nessie compared to any of the other glide baits. It's neat. It looks cool. You can fish it. I have had a few fish follow it. Like I said, I've fished this thing for over 7 days. Yesterday was the first time I was able to get fish to follow it. I did have 2 swipe at it, but they just caught like the very end of the tail, nowhere near the hook. They were just like checking it out, tasting it. I don't know. If you're just wanting to buy a lure to like screw around with at your pond or to take to the river, I wouldn't take it to the river. It's not heavy enough. It's not going to work with the current. The thing's just going to flop sideways. You're not going to be able to control it. If you've got open water, calm water, no current, very hungry fish that are starving, then you can try it out. Honestly, for what I'm getting out of it, I would rather have a jig head and a little $2 pack of paddle tails. You'll catch a lot more fish. I could be doing something wrong. It could be designed for a different type of fishing than what I'm doing. But if you're younger, if you're trying to save your money, if you're trying to get into fishing, there's a lot more lures you can use to be effective and catch fish than this thing. And you're going to have to retrain your brain and your muscle memory on how to retrieve it, which is different from any other lure you'll ever use. So just keep that in mind. It's fun, it's pretty, it looks neat. It's a good design. Somebody put a lot of thought into it. Let's see if I can get it in the angle. It is a good design. It's pretty. Somebody put a lot of thought into it. But that was somebody in Japan that worked for Flag. And then a big company came and stole it and made this. And now the guy that put his heart and soul into designing a new lure doesn't really have anything anymore. So I would say don't buy it.